May 1943. A humid dawn breaks over the docks of Norfolk, Virginia. The air is thick with salt, diesel smoke, and the low rumble of American voices barking orders. You step off the gangplank of the Liberty ship with hundreds of other defeated men, sun-bleached uniforms of the Afrika Korps still caked in North African sand, eyes hollow from months of desert fighting, thirst, and the long, rolling nightmare across the Atlantic. Your name is Lieutenant Heinrich Mueller, 26 years old, a Panzer Grenadier captured outside Tunis just weeks earlier. Like the rest, you clutch a thin blanket in whatever pride the surrender left you. Nazi propaganda had prepared you for this moment. Chains, starvation, beatings, the vengeful cruelty of a decadent enemy. Instead, the American guards are calm, almost bored. No whips, no dogs. They count you off in orderly lines, hand out fresh towels, and march you toward waiting trains under a sky wider than anything you've seen in Europe. The click-clack of the wheels carries you deep into the American heartland for days. Through the slatted windows, you glimpse endless green fields, towering grain silos, fat cattle grazing without a care. Your stomach growls at the memory of the hot meal they served you aboard the ship. Real meat, white bread, coffee with actual sugar. Some men whispered it was a trick. Others ate in stunned silence, afraid it would vanish. The train finally slows on a warm afternoon outside Concordia, Kansas. Camp Concordia. Barbed wire gleams in the sun. Watchtowers rise at the corners. But something feels wrong. There is no mud, no filth, no skeletal figures shuffling behind the fences. As the gates swing open and you march inside, the first shock hits you squarely in the chest. Row after row of clean white barracks, freshly painted, lawns of clipped grass between them, and beyond the inner fence, a baseball diamond, perfectly level infield, real bases, even a backstop. A group of American soldiers in t-shirts are casually tossing a ball, laughing. Your fellow POWs stare, murmuring in confusion. One sergeant from Rommel's 21st Panzer Division whispers, "This is a prison camp?" That evening, after a meal of steak, potatoes, vegetables, and unbelievably a scoop of vanilla ice cream that melts on your tongue like nothing you've tasted in years, the guards announce recreation time. You follow the crowd to a large hall. Lights come on. A projector hums to life. On the screen appears a world in motion. Bright streets, beautiful women, gleaming cars, and music that swings with impossible energy. Hollywood, a film called Yankee Doodle Dandy. Men in the audience, hardened soldiers who survived Al Alamein and Kasserine, sit motionless, eyes wide, as James Cagney dances across the screen. You grip the edge of your seat. This cannot be real. Back home, your wife writes of bombed-out cities, empty shops, and children crying for hunger. Here, your enemies are showing you moving pictures of their prosperity while feeding you better than the Wehrmacht ever did. But the real disbelief is only beginning. The next morning, the sun rises over Camp Concordia and the impossible reality deepens. You, Lieutenant Heinrich Mueller, stand on the edge of the perfectly manicured baseball field, still wearing your faded Afrika Korps tunic, unable to look away. American guards in rolled-up sleeves toss a leather glove to a group of German POWs. "Want to learn?" one says with a grin. Some of your comrades, men who once charged British tanks at Tobruk, hesitantly join in. The crack of the bat echoes across the camp like rifle fire, but no one flinches. Instead, laughter, genuine, unguarded laughter, rises into the Kansas sky. By midday, the temperature climbs, and the Americans open the canteen. You file through the line and receive a tray heavy with roast beef, mashed potatoes swimming in gravy, fresh corn on the cob, and a tall glass of cold milk. Dessert is another scoop of that same creamy vanilla ice cream. You sit at a long table with men from the 10th Panzer Division and the Hermann Göring Regiment. No one speaks at first. Forks move slowly, almost reverently. One grizzled sergeant finally mutters, "In Germany right now, my children are eating turnip soup, if they're lucky." The words hang in the air like smoke. After lunch, you're allowed into the camp library, a real library with hundreds of books in both German and English, newspapers too. You pick up a copy of Life magazine and stare at the glossy photographs, American factories churning out tanks and planes and endless assembly lines, smiling workers, cities untouched by bombs. The contrast with the rubble of Hamburg and Berlin you left behind is almost physically painful. A young private from your unit flips through the pages beside you, his face pale. "They told us America was weak, decadent, finished," he whispers. "Heinrich, what if everything they told us was a lie?" As evening falls, the projector fires up again. Tonight it's a different film, Casablanca. Humphrey Bogart's weary face fills the hall, with Ingrid Bergman's beauty leaving the hall in total silence. You watch men who once saluted Hitler with iron conviction, now wiping their eyes during the final scene. When the lights come up, no one moves for a long minute. The emotional whiplash is brutal. Enemies who are supposed to be soft and corrupt are showing you glamour, romance, and hope, while your own country burns. But the deepest cut comes at night. In your clean bunk, between crisp sheets, you lie awake listening to the quiet hum of the camp. No air raid sirens, no distant explosions, just crickets and the occasional laugh from the American guards playing cards outside. Through the window, you can see the baseball field bathed in moonlight, the bases glowing white. You think of your little brother, probably freezing in a trench on the Eastern Front right now, and feel something dangerous stir in your chest. Not just disbelief, but a quiet, creeping shame. You had been told the Americans were paper tigers, that their soldiers were spoiled, their society rotten. Yet here you are, a captured enemy officer, living better than most German civilians back home. Better, in fact, than you ever lived under the Reich. And the Americans aren't even rubbing it in. They're simply living. This comfort feels more devastating than any beating ever could.
The days at Camp Concordia begin to blur into a strange, almost dreamlike routine that chips away at everything you thought you knew. Lieutenant Heinrich Mueller, you now find yourself volunteering for the camp's farm detail just to stay busy. Every morning you march under light guard to the fields surrounding the camp, where American tractors rumble across endless acres of wheat and corn. The guards hand you tools and tell you the vegetables you grow will go straight to the camp kitchen, your own kitchen. By noon, the sweat on your back feels honest, almost freeing. One of the American sergeants, a big man from Iowa named Hank, tosses you a cold Coca-Cola from a cooler. The sweet fizz explodes on your tongue. You haven't tasted anything like it since before the war. Back inside the wire that afternoon, the baseball games have become serious. Teams have formed. Afrika Korps All-Stars versus Panzer League. Men who once stormed across Libya in half-tracks are now sliding into bases, kicking up dust, arguing over strikes and broken English. You watch Captain Ernst von Schultz, a decorated tank commander who lost half his face at Gazala, laughing like a schoolboy as he rounds third base. The sight is surreal. These are the same officers who once swore to fight to the last bullet for the Fuhrer. But the evenings always deliver the heaviest blows. The projector room fills again after supper. Tonight, the film is Gone with the Wind. For 3 hours, the men sit in rapt silence as Technicolor flames consume Atlanta, and Clark Gable's Rhett Butler delivers lines dripping with American defiance. When the lights rise, no one claps. A Luftwaffe pilot in the back row suddenly stands and says loudly, "This is what we were fighting? This?" His voice cracks. Several men look away. You feel it too, a hollow ache spreading behind your ribs. The scale of American wealth, confidence, and sheer abundance on that screen makes the grand promises of the 1,000-year life feel small and perfect in comparison. Later that night, new letters arrive from Germany. You read yours under the bare bulb of the barrel. Your wife writes of standing in line for 6 hours for a loaf of bread that tastes like sawdust. The constant wail of sirens. Of your young son asking why the sky burns at night. The paper trembles in your hands. Across the room, a sergeant from the 15th Panzer Grenadiers reads his own letter and begins to cry silently. No one mocks him. The contrast is now unbearable. Here you have steak on Tuesdays, ice cream on Thursdays, movies on Fridays, and organized sports on Saturdays. Back home, women and children are being buried under rubble. Whispers spread through the camp like wildfire. In the laundry room, in the showers, behind the mess hall, small groups of POWs speak in low voices. Goebbels said they were starving too. They told us New York was bombed flat. Look around you. Some men grow angry. Others grow dangerously quiet. A few hardcore Nazis try to enforce discipline, reminding everyone of their oath, but their words land like stones in deep water. The comfort is poisoning the old certainties. You lie awake again, staring at the ceiling. The American way of war is not what you expected. They don't need to torture you. They don't need to starve you. They simply show you their world, bright, loud, overflowing, and let the truth do the rest. For the first time since your capture, a terrifying thought enters your mind, clear and cold. What if we were never going to win? The baseball field outside sits empty under the stars, waiting for tomorrow's game. The sight no longer seems ridiculous. It feels like a quiet judgment.
Weeks turn into months at Camp Concordia, and the quiet erosion becomes something deeper, more dangerous. Lieutenant Heinrich Mueller, you now stand on the pitcher's mound of the baseball diamond in the late Kansas summer, the leather glove feeling strangely natural on your left hand. The crack of the bat sends the ball soaring, and for a few seconds you forget you are a prisoner of war. Cheers rise from both German and American spectators lining the field. Captain von Scholze slaps you on the back as you jog back to the dugout, his scarred face split in a grin you never thought possible. The game ends with handshakes and shared cigarettes. No salutes, no Heil Hitler. Just men playing ball under an endless American sky. But not everyone is smiling. In the shadows behind Barrack 12, a small knot of hardcore Nazis, mostly SS and committed party members, gather after dark. They speak in urgent whispers, eyes darting toward the watchtowers. Their leader, a gaunt Oberleutnant named Kessler, who once served in the Sichtdienst, warns the others. This is psychological warfare. The Amis are softening us. Ice cream today, betrayal tomorrow. They pass around smuggled copies of old Nazi newspapers and try to hold secret loyalty meetings. A few younger POWs still snap to attention when they enter a room. Most others now roll their eyes or simply walk away. The real fracture comes on a warm September evening. The weekly movie is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. As Jimmy Stewart's idealistic senator fights corruption on the giant screen, the hall falls into a different kind of silence. When the film ends, a young Luftwaffe mechanic stands up suddenly and shouts, "That is more honest than anything Goebbels ever showed us." Chaos erupts. Shouts fly across the room. Fists are raised. American guards rush in to break up the scuffle before it turns ugly. That night, for the first time, you hear German prisoners arguing bitterly with each other, not about escape, but about truth, about what they were fighting for, about what they had been willing to die for. You return to your bunk and pull out your wife's latest letter. The paper is thin, the ink smudged. She writes that Berlin was hit again last week. The neighbors' children are now orphans. There is no coal for winter. She ends with a single line that cuts like shrapnel. Sometimes I wonder if the Americans are really the monsters they told us. You fold the letter slowly, heart pounding. Across the barrack, men are listening to the camp radio, an American station playing Glenn Miller's In the Mood. The swing music drifts through the night air, carefree and unstoppable. You think of your panzer unit charging through the dust at CD Rezek, believing every word of the propaganda. Now that same dust feels like it was from another lifetime. The next morning, something shifts visibly. During roll call, fewer men click their heels with the old precision. When the American commandant, a calm colonel from Texas, announces an extra movie showing at a new shipment of athletic equipment, scattered applause breaks out. Genuine applause from captured German soldiers. Kessler and his group watch from the back, faces twisted with rage and impotence. The comfort has become a weapon more powerful than any bomb. Every scoop of ice cream, every Hollywood fantasy flickering on the screen, every lazy afternoon on the baseball field drives the knife deeper.
You are not being tortured. You are being shown what victory looks like. And for the first time, many men in Camp Concordia are quietly choosing it over the world they left behind. The question that now haunts the barracks at night is no longer when will we be freed, but something far more dangerous. What will we do when the war is truly over and we have to go home to the ruins?
The first cold winds of autumn sweep across the Kansas plains in October 1943, rattling the windows of the white barracks at Camp Concordia. Lieutenant Heinrich Mueller, you pull your wool coat tighter as you walk the perimeter path with 3 other officers from the 10th Panzer. The baseball field now lies dormant under a dusting of frost, bases stored away, but the memories of summer games linger like ghosts. Today, the conversation is different. No more boasting about Rommel's genius or the inevitable triumph of the Reich. Instead, the voices are low and urgent. "Have you heard the latest from the radio?" asks Captain von Schulze, his scarred face tight. "The Americans have landed in Italy. Our boys are fighting house to house in Salerno." The group falls silent. You remember the confident maps back in Tunisia, the promises that Italy would be an impregnable fortress. Now the Americans are on European soil, and here you stand, eating their food and watching their films. That evening, the camp radio brings the real blow. The BBC German service, allowed under the Geneva Convention, cuts through the static with merciless clarity. Allied forces are advancing. German cities are burning night after night. The voice lists destroyed factories, sunken U-boats, entire divisions ground to dust on the Eastern Front. When the broadcast ends, the mess hall is quieter than a grave. Men stare into their plates of pork chops and applesauce as if the food itself has become accusatory. You notice the change in the days that follow. The hardcore Nazis grow more desperate. Oberleutnant Kessler and his circle now openly threaten anyone who speaks too favorably about the Americans. One young private is beaten behind the laundry after he says he prefers American cigarettes to German ones. But their power is slipping. More and more men avoid them. Some even volunteer openly for English classes and farm work, earning extra privileges and smiles from the guards. One crisp afternoon, the American commandant calls a special assembly. Colonel William A. Holden, a calm pipe-smoking officer from Texas, stands on a wooden platform and announces in careful German, "Gentlemen, new books have arrived. Also, we have received permission to show you newsreels from the front." The screen flickers to life. You see grainy footage of American Liberty ships sliding down the ways in Portland and San Francisco, one every few days. Endless rows of tanks and planes rolling off assembly lines. Then the devastating images. German cities reduced to rubble, civilians huddled in shelters, the faces of exhausted Wehrmacht prisoners in Italy looking exactly like you once did. The hall is deathly silent, except for the hum of the projector. When the lights come up, no one moves. A Luftwaffe major suddenly stands and says loudly enough for everyone to hear, "We were lied to from the beginning." Several heads nod. Kessler's group glares murderously, but they are outnumbered now. The poison of truth has spread too far. Later that night, you sit on your bunk rereading your wife's most recent letter. She describes hiding in a cellar during a raid that lasted 7 hours. Your son now draws pictures of airplanes with American stars on their wings. The words blur. You look across the barrack and see men quietly tearing Nazi insignia from their uniforms, hiding them under mattresses. Others practice English phrases with new intensity. "I surrender. I want to work. America is good." The baseball field may be quiet, but something far more important is awakening inside these fences. The movies, the ice cream, the Coca-Cola, the fair treatment, they were never the real weapons. The real weapon was the mirror the Americans held up, forcing you to see the colossal gap between Nazi promises and American reality. You close your eyes and hear the distant swing of Glenn Miller drifting from the guardhouse radio. For the first time, you do not fight the feeling rising in your chest. It feels like the beginning of freedom. But with that freedom comes a heavier question that keeps you awake until the early hours. When this war ends, what kind of Germany will you be returning to? And will you even recognize it?
November 1943. The Kansas wind howls across the plains like a Russian winter, driving sleet against the barracks windows at Camp Concordia. Lieutenant Heinrich Müller, you stand at the edge of the now frozen baseball field, boots crunching on thin ice, watching American guards clear snow from the paths with cheerful efficiency. Inside the recreation hall, the stove radiates blessed heat, while men huddle over chessboards and newspapers. The war feels both impossibly distant and suffocatingly close. The latest newsreel hits like artillery. On the screen, you watch the aftermath of the massive Allied bombing raids on Hamburg, firestorms that devoured entire districts. Then the camera cuts to American shipyards, another Liberty ship sliding into the water every 4 days. The narrator's calm voice states the numbers in German translation. Over 8,000 tanks built this year alone, 100,000 planes, mountains of food and supplies crossing the Atlantic untouched. The hall is so quiet you can hear the projector's fan whirring. When the reel ends, a former Stuka pilot from the Africa Corps leans forward and says flatly, "We are not losing. We have already lost." The words detonate softly but completely. That night, the whispers turn into open conversations. In the dimly lit barracks, men who once would have reported such talk now join it. You listen as Captain von Schulze, the scarred tank commander, admits quietly, "I believed in it. I believed every speech. Now I see what they hid from us." Someone passes around a fresh copy of Stars and Stripes. The headline screams the truth. German forces in full retreat on the Eastern Front. Italy collapsing. U-boats sinking.
Faster than they can be replaced. The Coca-Cola in your hand suddenly tastes bittersweet. Oberlieutenant Kessler and his shrinking circle of fanatics grow more unhinged. They corner a young signals corporal who dared to laugh at an American joke and beat him badly. The next morning, the American guards investigate. Instead of the brutal punishment the Nazis expect, Colonel Holden simply moves the worst troublemakers to a stricter compound and warns the rest. This is still America. You fight here, you lose privileges. No torture, no executions, just calm consequences. The contrast humiliates the hardliners more than any whip could. You volunteer for the camp orchestra that week. Yes, an orchestra. Germans playing American jazz and German classical pieces on instruments provided by the YMCA. As you practice in the mood on a borrowed saxophone, the notes feel like rebellion and surrender at the same time. Men who once marched to the Horst Wessel lead now tap their feet to swing rhythms. The music becomes another crack in the old armor. Letters from home arrive more sporadically now, each one heavier. Your wife writes of entire neighborhoods erased in one night, of eating bread made from sawdust and pea flour. She asks if the rumors are true, that American prisoners in Germany are starving while you eat steak.
You cannot bring yourself to answer that question on paper. One freezing evening after lights out, you gather with 6 other officers in a corner of the barrack. No one says the words betrayal or defeat directly. Instead, von Schulze asks the dangerous question. When this ends, what do we tell our children? The silence that follows is the loudest sound you've heard since surrender. For the first time, men speak openly about the possibility, no, the probability, that Hitler's war is finished, and that the America they once mocked is about to inherit the world. You step outside alone later that night, despite the cold. Snow falls softly on the baseball field, turning the diamond into something pure and unreal. The watchtower lights cast long shadows across the white ground. You think of the propaganda films you saw in 1941. Americans as jazz-crazed weaklings, their democracy a joke, their industry a paper tiger. The reality surrounding you now laughs at those lies, louder than any Hollywood actor ever could.
The ice cream, the movies, the baseball, the endless food, they were never luxuries meant to break you. They were simply everyday life for a nation that decided to fight with its factories, its freedom, and its sheer, unstoppable abundance. And in that moment, standing under the falling snow, you finally admit the truth that has been...
Spring 1945. The snow has long melted from the baseball diamond at Camp Concordia, replaced by lush green grass and the sharp crack of bats once again. Lieutenant Heinrich Müller, you stand in the outfield during a warm May afternoon game, but the usual shouts and laughter feel muted. Every man on the field keeps glancing toward the guardhouse, where the radio crackles with urgent updates. The war in Europe is collapsing. On the evening of May 8th, the announcement comes through loud and clear. Germany has surrendered unconditionally. The camp falls into a stunned hush. No cheering from the Americans. They simply turn up the volume so everyone can hear. You stand frozen as the voice declares the end of the Third Reich. Tears stream down the faces of grown men who once stormed across continents. Some drop to their knees. Others stare blankly at the perfectly maintained American lawns, the white barracks, the overflowing mess hall in the distance. The next days bring a flood of news.
You watch in horrified silence as the screen shows what the Allies discovered at Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and Dachau. The hall is deathly quiet, except for occasional gasps. Men who had defended the fatherland with their lives now confront images of emaciated prisoners and mass graves. Captain von Schulze sits beside you, his scarred face ashen. "We knew something was wrong," he whispers. "But not this. Never this." The comfortable world behind the wire suddenly feels like a judgment seat. Oberleutnant Kessler and the last of his fanatics try one final stand in the barracks that night. They scream about betrayal and demand continued loyalty to a dead Fuhrer. This time, no one listens. A group of former Afrika Korps soldiers, including several you once fought alongside, physically drag them outside and hand them over to the American guards. Colonel Holden watches the scene with quiet authority and simply says, "The war is over, gentlemen, for all of us." In the weeks that follow, the emotional floodgates open completely. You and hundreds of others spend long evenings in the recreation hall, not watching Hollywood movies anymore, but talking, really talking. Men confess their doubts, their nightmares from the desert, their growing realization that they had been used as pawns in a monstrous lie. The ice cream still comes after meals. The Coca-Cola is still cold. But now every bite and every sip tastes different. It tastes like mercy that the Reich never showed its own people, let alone its enemies. One humid evening in June, you sit on the bleachers of the baseball field with Captain von Schulze as the sun sets in a blaze of American orange and gold. He lights a Lucky Strike cigarette, American of course, and says softly, "They didn't break us with guns, Heinrich.
They broke us with baseball and movies and 3 meals a day. They showed us what a nation looks like when it doesn't live in constant fear and hatred." You nod, unable to speak. The gentle Kansas breeze carries the scent of fresh-cut grass. Somewhere in the distance, Glenn Miller plays again from the radio. You think of your wife and son waiting somewhere in the ruins of Germany. You think of the lies you once believed so completely. And you think of the strange, devastating kindness that surrounded you here. Not weakness, but strength of a kind the world had never seen before. The comfortable prison camp did more than hold you. It converted you. As the first trains begin preparing to take some POWs home for reconstruction work, a new fear grips many. Not of returning to Germany, but of leaving this mirror that showed the truth so clearly.
Summer 1945. The Kansas sun beats down on Camp Concordia with the same relentless heat you once knew in the Libyan desert, but everything else has changed. Lieutenant Heinrich Müller, you stand at the edge of the baseball diamond one final time, duffel bag at your feet, watching American guards hand out discharge papers. The war in the Pacific still rages,
But for you and thousands of other German POWs, the journey home, or what remains of home, has begun. The camp feels different now. The white barracks are still spotless, the lawns still perfectly trimmed, but an unmistakable melancholy hangs in the air. Men who once argued fiercely now embrace like brothers. Captain von Schultz grips your shoulder hard as you wait for your train. "Write when you can, Heinrich. Tell me what you find." His voice is rough. You both know the truth. The comfortable world behind these wires is about to vanish forever.
The final weeks had been the most intense. Newsreels showed the full horror of the concentration camps in graphic detail. Many men sat through them in complete silence, then walked out, unable to eat the steak and ice cream waiting in the mess hall. Others wrote long letters of confession they would never send. The American guards, to their credit, did not gloat. Colonel Holden simply told the assembly one quiet evening, "You have seen what we fight against. Now go home and help build something better." No lectures, no forced re-education, just that simple, devastating statement. As your train pulls away from the camp platform on a bright July morning, you press your face to the window. The baseball field shrinks in the distance. The watchtowers disappear behind the trees. You pass the same endless green fields and fat cattle you saw on arrival 2 years earlier. This time the sight brings no disbelief, only a deep, aching understanding. The Americans never needed you to hate you. Their abundance did the work for them. The long journey across the Atlantic is quiet. The Liberty ship carries you and hundreds of others back toward a ruined continent. You share a cramped bunk with men who now speak openly about democracy, about the new Germany they hope to help rebuild, about the children they want to raise without the poison of the past. One former SS corporal, once the most arrogant man in your barrack, now sits reading an English dictionary every day, muttering phrases like, "I am sorry," and "we must change." You arrive in Bremerhaven in late August. The contrast strikes like a physical blow. Bombed-out buildings lean like broken teeth against the sky. Gaunt civilians shuffle through rebel-strewn streets. Children with hollow eyes stare at your relatively healthy frame. A woman, perhaps your wife's age, approaches the column of returning POWs and spits, "You ate well while we starved?" Some men hang their heads. Others meet her gaze with quiet shame. You finally reach what remains of your neighborhood in the British occupation zone. Your wife runs to you through the debris, thinner, older, but alive. Your son, now 7, hides behind her leg at first, then touches your clean American-issued coat with wonder. That night, by the light of a single candle, you try to describe Camp Concordia, the baseball, the movies, the ice cream, the kindness. The words feel ridiculous in this broken place. Your wife listens, tears streaming, and finally whispers, "Then perhaps there is still hope." Months later, as you work with other former POWs clearing rubble and helping rebuild, the lessons of Kansas stay with you. You teach your son to throw a baseball made from scavenged leather and string. You hum Glenn Miller tunes while working. And when the hardest days come, you remember the mirror the Americans held up, not to humiliate, but to show what was possible when a nation fought with ingenuity instead of hatred. The comfortable prison camps of America did not just hold German soldiers, they planted seeds in thousands of men who would return to help shape a different Germany, a better one.
3 years after the guns fell silent in Europe, Lieutenant Heinrich Müller, no longer a lieutenant, just Heinrich now, stands on a muddy construction site in what remains of Frankfurt. The air smells of wet cement and hope. He swings a shovel alongside other former POWs, helping rebuild a school where children will one day learn a different history. Sweat runs down his back, but the work feels clean, honest. In his pocket, he still carries a small, faded photograph, the Camp Concordia baseball team, summer of 1944. He is in the middle row, smiling awkwardly in his captured uniform, glove on his hand, standing shoulder to shoulder with Captain von Schultze and men who once wore the Iron Cross with pride. On the back, someone had written in English,
Good game, boys. See you on the other side of peace. He smiles faintly every time he looks at it. Stories from the American camps have spread quietly through the new Germany. Thousands of former POWs returned carrying the same quiet transformation. They spoke in low voices around kitchen tables about the ice cream that never ran out, the Hollywood films that showed a world without constant fear, the baseball games that turned enemies into teammates, and the Coca-Cola that tasted like the future. Many of these men became the backbone of the Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle. They worked in factories, taught in schools, and helped build the Federal Republic with a fierce determination never to repeat the madness. You, Heinrich, often think back to that humid dawn in Norfolk and the first impossible scoop of vanilla ice cream. It was never really about the dessert. It was about the casual abundance that revealed the lie at the heart of everything you had been taught. The Nazis had promised a master race, conquering a weak, degenerate America. Instead, America had fed you better than the Reich ever fed its own soldiers, entertained you, treated you with dignity under the Geneva Convention, and then sent you home without chains. One evening in 1952, you sit with your son, now 14, on the steps of your rebuilt home. The boy holds a real American baseball you managed to bring back, turning it slowly in his hands. "Papa," he asks, "did the Americans hate us?" You think for a long moment, the Kansas wind almost audible in your memory. "No," you say finally, "they didn't need to. They simply showed us what strength without hatred looks like. They beat us with baseball fields and moving pictures and endless food while we were still screaming slogans in the dark." Your wife joins you, her hand resting on your shoulder. The scars of the war are still there, in the missing buildings, in the nightmares that still wake you. But something stronger has taken root. A generation of former prisoners returned, determined to make Germany a place where children could play baseball instead of learning to hate. Across the ocean, Camp Concordia is gone now. The white barracks dismantled, the baseball diamond returned to Kansas farmland. But its true legacy lives on in quiet, uncelebrated ways. In the democratic Germany rising from the ashes, in the men who traded swastikas for swing music, in the fathers who chose never to lie to their sons again. You look up at the night sky over Frankfurt and remember the projector light flickering in that recreation hall, the laughter echoing across the diamond, the cold sweetness of ice cream on a tongue that had known only desert dust and propaganda. The Americans never needed to break you with violence. They simply opened the door to a better world and let you walk through it yourself. And in the end, that was the most devastating, most merciful victory of all. Today, a quiet cemetery outside a small town in western Germany. Heinrich Müller, now an old man in his late 90s, stands before a simple headstone. The wind moves gently through the trees, carrying the faint scent of fresh grass, the same smell that once drifted across a baseball field in Kansas. He places a single American baseball at the base of the stone, belonging to Captain Ernst von Schulze, who passed away peacefully a decade earlier. Heinrich straightens slowly, eyes distant. Old friend, they never understood, did they? The ones who stayed angry, the ones who still do. We didn't lose to superior numbers or better tanks in the end. We lost to something far more powerful. He smiles, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening with memory. In the decades after the war, historians would record the numbers. Nearly 300,000 German POWs held in the United States, treated under the Geneva Convention with a generosity that stunned even the prisoners themselves. They ate 3,000 calories a day, while German civilians survived on less than 1,000. They watched over 2,000 Hollywood films. They played baseball, learned trades, listened to jazz, and drank ice-cold Coca-Cola under the wide American sky. And thousands of them returned home forever changed. They became teachers, engineers, businessmen, and politicians who helped forge the modern democratic Germany. Men who had once marched beneath the swastika now taught their children that strength does not require hatred, and that true power can afford to be merciful. The comfortable prison camps did what no battlefield victory alone could achieve. They planted the seeds of a better future inside the hearts of the defeated. Heinrich turns and walks slowly back toward the car where his grandson waits. The young man holds up an old, worn glove, the very same one Heinrich had used on that Kansas diamond so many decades ago. "Grandpa, tell me again about the baseball," the boy says with a grin. Heinrich chuckles, the sound warm and alive. "Ah, that was the day we realized we weren't in hell. We were in a mirror, and what we saw looking back at us was the future we had tried to destroy." As they drive away, the old man watches the green fields roll past, fields not unlike those in Kansas. He closes his eyes and can still taste the vanilla ice cream melting on his tongue, still hear the crack of the bat, still see the bright, impossible world flickering across the projector screen. The Americans never needed to break the German soldier with cruelty. They simply showed him a better way to live and let the truth finish the job. That was their greatest, most devastating, and most enduring victory of the entire war. A victory won not with bombs, but with baseball fields, Hollywood dreams, and the quiet, overwhelming power of decency.